So why are we aiming to have a emergency fund? An emergency fund is so important, especially if you are living week to week. So an emergency fund, when you Google it, if you're on YouTube or whatever it is, and you look up emergency funds, they're talking about thousands. They're talking about 3 or 6 months expenses, and it seems so unobtainable, especially when you're in that place where you're living week to week, when you're just struggling to pay for your shopping and your rent and things like that. So when I'm talking about an emergency fund here, what I'm really saying is baby steps. I'm saying like one week's expenses. So if you work out how much do I need for 1 week, that's your first emergency fund to kind of aim for. But even smaller than that, starting off with, €20. Can I save up €20 and not touch that? And then next week I'm going to try and add €20, and next week I'm going to try and add €20, or I'm going to maybe put it up a little bit. I figured out that I can do without this thing, so I'm going to add the €10 that I save from that, and I'm going to put it into the emergency fund, so that you start building up something to give you a cushion, so that you feel safer, so that you get that breathing space, so that that if some like unexpected bill, or if something breaks, that you have something backing you, and it takes you out of that like it's like a low level panic mode that you're in all the time when you're living week to week, when you don't have something behind you, knowing that you can pay for whatever it is that comes up. Because when something comes up that we have to pay for, whether it's the car or a bill or, whatever it might be, you go into crisis mode, and it's awful. That feeling that you get when you're in crisis mode and like, I can't pay this. How am I going to pay this? And that's when you end up spending more money in the long run, because you're having to borrow off of somebody, whether it's a money lender or, a loan from the bank, credit cards or whatever it might be. That's how you end up in debt, because you didn't have the money in the first place to pay for the emergency, and like I said, when we're talking about an emergency fund, we're not talking about luxury here. When you look up emergency funds, again, like I said, a lot of it is so unobtainable, and a lot of them are in a position that the people who are living week to week are not in. They're talking about investing money and all of this kind of stuff. We're not talking about luxury here. We're talking about freedom and breathing space. We're talking about a goal of €20, then €50, then €100, and we're trying to give ourselves that breathing space. I know I said that before, but it's so important. And what I would do is I would treat this like a bill. So I would decide, like I decided, I'm going to put this much away towards my emergency fund, and this is like a bill. So when I get paid, that money goes in there, and I do not touch it. I don't touch it. That's it. And I just act like it's not there anymore. But then when you check the balance, and you see that going up even just a little bit each week, it just feels so good. And like and you spend something, you go out and you buy something, and you think, oh, I really like that thing, I'm going to buy it. And you get that quick dopamine hit from the thing that you've bought. The dopamine hit that you get from seeing that money in your account rising and rising and rising, and knowing that money is there for you if you ever need it, is so much better than the quick dopamine hit that you're going to get from just spending and buying something in the shop that you want. And having that money in the bank, however much it might be, knowing that you have something behind you, it changes your perspective. So like if you're listening to this and you're living week to week, then I have been there and you have been there, where you're sat at the table and you're thinking, I'm doing out my budget here and I have more going out than I have coming in, and you have that panic like deep inside. I know it well. You're in a perspective there of lack. You're in a perspective of I don't have enough. And at the time you might not have enough, but knowing that you have even a small amount behind you for when things do crop up, it changes your perspective from I don't have enough to I have what I need when I need it. I have it there for when I need it. And that is massive, changing your perspective on everything. I'm a big believer that we create our own reality, and our perspective of things is how they are, for ourselves personally. So when you have a perspective of I have enough when I need it, that shows up for you. And I've experienced that myself. Having an emergency fund also means that seasonal spending doesn't seem as scary. You know, when you've got things like birthdays and Christmas and back to school and all of those different things, having something there makes those things not seem so scary. They don't seem so big and looming over you. And it's not even that you're going to dip into the emergency fund to get those things. You can if you need to, because those would count. If you're living week to week, that's what you need to do. But I've found that having that small emergency fund changed my perspective, so that when those things were coming up, I was aware of them. I knew they were coming, and I was kind of preparing myself in a way of like, well, if I can put this much away into the emergency fund, I could also put this small little bit away into the back to school fund or into the Christmas fund. And it just, these things didn't seem so scary. And even if I was at the time buying those things on the week that I needed them, it still didn't seem like such a big thing, because I knew I had the emergency fund back in me if I needed it. And honestly, it makes you feel proud of yourself, knowing that you have that money there, that you did that. Especially if you've never managed to do it before, you really, really feel this pride in yourself. And I was so proud of myself for being able to start that and keep it going. And you start to feel this kind of inner strength of like, I can do this. Like, I'm managing. I'm well able to do this. And it really is a big thing. Like, we get into this survival mindset, and the survival mindset kind of makes us feel that like the small amounts aren't going to make a difference. Like, I could put €5 in a bank account, but sure, what difference is that going to make? I might as well just spend it on this thing that's going to make me happier, that's going to make the kids happier, whatever it is. But the small amounts, they really do add up. They really, really do. When you start to add up all the small things that you could have put away, it does really show you that the small actions really, really do matter. And then really what it does is it builds trust in yourself. You're building trust in yourself. You're telling yourself that I am strong, I am capable, I can do this, and you're taking care of your future self. So if you have any tips on your own emergency fund and how you started to do that, if you want to share anything in the comments for anybody else that might be watching and might be reading the comments, I would absolutely love if you could do that, because we really should stick together and really let each other know that we can do this.